Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream.
Welcome, yeah. Hi, everyone.
Welcome, everyone.
This ending of this intro is always like so hard. We need to find a better way. It's like
Yeah.
out and go. Okay.
Today we have the office hour again. Today with a big group actually from our side. Jan is here, Mike is here, Esther is here, Marco's here, and there's Keegan as well. So we're with the 6 of us. So that's nice. Let me share my screen. Then I can show you where is Sigma.
And I'm just gonna remove the rest of us from the stage. That you have some more space. Otherwise, it's crowded.
Yeah, it is.
Is my screen visible? Yeah, there it is. All right, August 8th of 2024. As mentioned, today we have in here Jan, Mike, Esther, Keegan, Marco, and myself. To start it off, we have some topics to discuss, but first of all, we have a Substack. So if you want to stay updated on what we're doing on our live streams, etc., subscribe over there on our Substack. We also have a Slack community, which probably most of you already know, but if you want to join, go to our website and join from there. We have also some new feedback and roadmap tooling. Check out the linking in here so we can get your feedback in and hopefully improve the product even more. For today, we have a few topics to discuss. First of all, Esther is going to show something around the Token Studio and Penpot integration, the new features with a demo. After that, we're going to talk about the Token Studio for Figma plugin 2.0, which is coming up very soon. And after that, we're going to dive into the Studio Alpha, which we are now starting off with. So hopefully some nice updates in there as well. And at the end, we have time for some community questions. We already have a few in there that came out of the community. But if there are some other questions you might have, feel free to add them over there in the FigJam board. We have the link in the description of the YouTube video. Maybe Marco can share it in the other channels as well, since we're streaming on multiple platforms today. That would be great. So yeah, that's the intro. So I think first of all, we can kick it off with the Token Studio and Penpot integration. Esther, do you might want to take the word? And probably the screen. Oh, we cannot hear you yet, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly take over the screen. And 1 second. Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to show a little bit about what's been happening on Penpot. There's a few more exciting features that we've been building, and I think been communicating about a lot of things that has been happening. And I just sat down to make this demo card and I got lost along the way, and I created a lot of tokens already for the demo. But I think what I will show is quickly show, like, I have this base token over here, which I have at 1. And the most cool thing that we have here right now is that if I change this, I have it connected to all my other tokens. So you can see like my border radius and everything is changing over here. And okay, that did not change so much. Maybe I should do it a little more. Yeah. So here we have the references coming in and the math. So I have the base token over here, and which I have kind of linked to my border radius small. So if I can see over here, which is like base divided by 2, which is giving me 16. And which is now then linked to all my other tokens, like my button border radius. So border radius small. So I have all my tokens piping through with references. So that's very cool. And now if I have just if I just quickly change something over here, like 4, for example, So as you can see, earlier we did not have, when we were changing the value of a token, the things were not changing on the canvas, but that is the exciting update that now when we change a token value, it updates on the canvas. So whatever token is applied, it is updating on the canvas. So that's very cool. And then another thing that I really wanted to show, a very cool thing, is that now we have a full contextual menu. So if I go over here, I have like all the contextual menu about spacing. So if I click on all, it was already applied, but let me quickly change that, apply some other button, maybe some other token, maybe. So I have this, and I can also apply specific, sorry, let me select that again, specific tokens to different properties from here. And also, let's say I have, let me quickly apply this gap. So basically what we have is we have all the contextual menu working, and it is working a little differently from the Figma plugin. And what we have also done is that when we remove a token by clicking on it, the property stays. It does not remove the property. It is, but the token is unapplied from here, which you can actually see if I quickly click on this one. And this is button border radius and also button horizontal. Then if I unclick this, the token is unapplied. So yeah, so these are like some of the new features that has come in the last few weeks. And yeah, we are building towards having an end-to-end workflow in Penpot so that we can create like this full token architecture. Right now, as you can see, we do not have sets, and that is the next big thing that is coming in the design tokens in Penpot. And then with sets, we are also coming in with themes. So then we'll be able to quickly make multi-brand and multi-theming that becomes a reality in Penpot really quickly then. So yeah, the kind of like the update on the Penpot side.
Yeah, maybe if I add a bit of context around the Penpot project, if you're not familiar with Penpot yet. So Penpot is a digital product design tool, very much like Figma or Motif or Sketch. However, this is, I think, the first real serious open source initiative that has actually brought a design tool at par. Some of the really cool things about Penpot actually are that apart from kind of working towards feature parity with the other platforms that are out there today, is that they also have taken a larger interest towards creating an environment that is also more developer focused, meaning that there's a lot more attention to, for example, code symmetry. They, for example, support grid layout. They support proper flexbox, those kind of things. There are some things that are not quite there yet that you might use a lot if you're building design systems, but they are coming very soon now. So, for example, things like variants, they are not there today, but yeah, that's going to come there in the very near future. Similarly, design tokens. So yeah, we are currently in a collaboration with Penpot, kind of building the native design token experience. So we're going with the real native design token format. So all your work in Penpot will be DTCG or the design tokens format compatible.
It is actually already compatible.
Yeah,
that's one thing.
Yeah. So we are compatible, but just like in the plugin, there is more functionality for which the spec does not yet provide. We believe that the spec will always evolve, so we don't want to stop you to do the things you really want to do. But yeah, your outputs are aligned like how you're used to that from the plugin, or at least in the upcoming plugin. You can opt into the DTCG format, and Penpot is the same. The other really nice thing about Penpot is that because we're bringing these open source projects together, so the entire design token library in Penpot runs natively on Style Dictionary under the hood. So what this means for you is that if you're building your tokens in Penpot and your teams are resolving in Penpot, out of the box, you know that your pipeline is going to run through Style Dictionary without any problems. So we have kind of solved all that for you. We are bringing sync providers, so you will soon be able to sync with your GitHub repositories. You'll be able to sync with the Studio platform, of course, being able to keep your design data in sync across all the different tools you use. Yeah, so the current state, right? So we are currently in kind of a closed beta, which we are running on our own infrastructure. So it's a separate instance of Penpot. But if you are interested in Penpot and design tokens, I would invite you to join our Slack and reach out to me or Esther, and we can add you to the closed beta. What you were just looking at is the current state. So as Esther mentioned, there's still some work, but we're very close. So we're coming very close to actually design tokens moving into the public release of Penpot, which means that, yeah, over the next months, you will actually have a very, very powerful tool in Penpot where you have native design tokens, no limitations on mode. So let me be very clear. We are not building a plugin in Penpot. There will be no pro license for the tokens in Penpot or whatsoever. We are building this as an open source collaboration. So this means fully open source without any restrictions. You will be able to use it, which means that you scale. For 100 brands, you need 100 modes. Well, we will not have modes. We will have a more flexible token architecture. But yeah, all this is available to you in a couple of months. So this is really exciting. Yeah, so I thought I'll sketch a little context around this. So if you have any feedback, for example, if you're trying it out, we know that the UI is not ideal right now because it's sitting in the left panel. So of course we will also bring a more comfortable token editing experience to Penpot. But we would love to know, for example, and this is one of the topics we are currently struggling with a little bit. Penpot also already has styles for colors and typography. And if you were to imagine a new design tool and you did not have to deal with any legacy, would you want to have styles and tokens, or would you want to have only tokens, or would you want to be able to choose in a project that I'm just using styles, or I'm having a token project? Yeah, that would be interesting for us to understand. How are you working with Figma today? Do you enjoy the integration of variables in styles, or do you find it annoying? We would really love to know those things in more detail and how you would imagine a more ideal workflow when there's a green canvas. And we literally have that right now. And with your feedback, we can make this the tool you have been dreaming of. So yeah, if you want to think along with us and provide some feedback, that would be super awesome.
Yeah.
I also quickly see a question here. I don't think directly related to Penpot, but can I export my variables from Figma? So I'll quickly answer that. Our plugin in Figma does that. And you can import variables from Figma into our plugin, which will then convert it for you automatically to design tokens. And then you can export those design tokens anywhere you want. You can download them. You can send them to your GitHub repository. You can directly feed them into Style Dictionary. And everything will work out of the box for you.
I think one more thing that with the Style Dictionary piece on Penpot, what we have done is there is a little bit of like more stricter naming conventions in terms of like design token naming. But I think that is basically this will help that in the future of your pipeline, there will be like no clashes, or there will be a lot less issues when you're going ahead and transforming your tokens, because we are making sure that it is compatible with Style Dictionary from the get-go.
Yeah, exactly. And just to talk a bit more about Style Dictionary, because Style Dictionary, of course, was created by Danny Banks at Amazon. And they maintained that project till about 2-3 years ago, until version 3. And somewhere a little over a year ago, we had a discussion with Danny and with the folks at Amazon Open Source. And so that's when we kind of decided to take over the Style Dictionary project, the active development. So we've built version 4. We just released that. And this is also a peek into a bit of the future, how we are going to handle design tokens for you. So currently the plugin has its own implementation of design tokens and how we manage the library. And there are, and maybe you have experience with that, where there were some situations where everything was working perfectly well in the plugin, but you're trying to run your pipeline and things are not working so well. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is unify all that. So first of all, we're abstracting some of the pieces. So that your design token dictionary or library, that's really one piece. Super abstract style dictionary. The way you run transforms of that is one piece. Your storage providers and syncing, that's one piece. And those things are all central pieces that we use across the products to just make sure that you will not have any conflict. So when you in the future work with the plugin in Figma or with Style Dictionary in your pipelines, and you want to move those tokens to Penpot, that's going to be a seamless effort. This is probably going to be the first time that design tokens will deliver on the promise. And we're just super dedicated to actually make that happen. But yeah, maybe enough on this topic for now, because we have a lot to cover. So I'm giving it back to Marco, I guess. Oh, Robert, there you are. Hey.
To me. Yep. Thanks for that. Really cool stuff coming up, I think, for Penpot, and a good bridge with Style Dictionary to the plugin, I believe. So I think I can introduce Jan. Welcome, Jan. And you're gonna show us some more about the upcoming 2.0 release for the plugin. Much anticipated, yes. I think.
Yeah, I'll do that. And I think a lot of people are waiting for that. So I hope to give a glimpse of what's coming. We did have a beta already going for quite a while now, which if anyone wants to try that out, they can just jump into our Slack, our community Slack, and jump into download the latest release candidate that we have, and also give us feedback on it, because we really want to make sure that when we release that we cover every case that we have so far, and find any problem that people might run into, really. I guess I'll just quickly jump into the upcoming changelog around what that could look like, which, if I share my screen real quick. And I guess I'll just share my entire screen, because then we can jump over. All right. So basically, this is the upcoming changelog that we have for the 2.0 version of the plugin. And there's a few quite interesting things in there that a lot of people will like. We had many of these were the most requested features that we have so far. For example, we have the W3C Design Tokens Community Group support in the product now. So that means that you can now set your format of your tokens to be using the new W3C DTCG format, which is the Design Tokens Community Group, which is aiming to create that format that will be that shared language across all tools. And we have that in the plugin in a way where you can switch between them. We decided to do it that way because not everyone wants to jump onto this new version just now. They might do that on their own terms. And by adding this as a switch that users can change to, we give users that control of, for this version or for this repository or for this project, I want to switch over. For this other one, I might not. So basically how that works in the plugin, I can maybe also very quickly share that. We would have something in here, and this is basically the 2.0 version, development builds basically. But if I jump to the JSON tab here, I can see that these are not using the W3C tokens. If I jump to settings though, I can see that this is using the legacy format, which is what we are calling that, basically the version of the format that we were using before this new format. If you jump over, you can switch this to use the W3C DTCG format. And by doing that, basically all my tokens are going to be stored with the dollar syntax in front of it, meaning that you can now use this format also with Style Dictionary, which also has support for this in the version 4 version. And yeah, overall, it is going to set you up for a more streamlined experience, I would say. One thing to note is that when you are pulling from a provider, like a Git provider, for example, that has this new format, we will automatically enable that format for you. So you don't have to set up anything if the repository is already using these. You just have to pull these tokens and we will detect that for you. If not, then basically each of these providers here has a way for you to change to the new format if you want to. So that's going to be quite cool to use, I would say. And then if we scroll down a little bit, because there is quite a lot that we cover, maybe I'll quickly do a high-level run-through of what we offer. The first piece is the format that I was just talking about. We also refactored the whole variables experience to be less I would say, distributed across the plugin, because so far the plugin has different ways to sync, which is sync variables, create variables, import variables, all of that, and the same thing for styles. So with this new experience, we basically consolidated all of that into one new modal that gives you access to all of the variables. The other thing that we had is non-local variable references, which really is a way for you to use variables across files. The other thing is variables in styles, meaning typography styles, meaning shadows, meaning border tokens, all of that. Also in gradients. So basically Figma supported that since a couple of months ago, and I think some of these were even older. But as they added that, we now are also in a position where we added that as well in one go, where you can use variables inside typography styles. Basically, that also means that we offer support for typography tokens. That is really just the same tokens that we had today, but you can now export them to variables. What I mean by that is font weight and font family and all of these that you might use inside your typography styles. And probably the most requested feature is the Bitbucket support that we integrated. This was stemming from a community contribution by Matt Oliver, so huge props to him. It was, I think, the most requested feature of the plugin so far that we had, with I think around 60 upvotes at GitHub. And yeah, we're excited to ship that as well. And I think that the change that I'm most excited about is the Token Studio platform support, which I'll get to in a second. Maybe I'll jump into some of these real quick, and please interrupt me if anyone has questions or so. Basically, the new way of interacting with variables is when you jump into Figma and you now want to export these tokens as variables, we offer you an export styles and variables button at the bottom. So there is just one way to export to Figma. And that means I can now use this one screen to create both variables and styles. And I could do that at the same time as well. We're likely going to revisit this UI in one of the upcoming updates because like from user feedback that we've received so far. And also there is some thinking that we have right now where we want to revisit how themes are being used in general to also streamline and make that more, well, easier in a way. But basically I have all of my options here that I need to create styles and variables. I can then confirm this, and then I'm able to choose which themes I want to create. In my case, I only have one, so there is only ever going to show up one. But you can now also, and this is another new thing, you can also create variables based on token sets, which means that themes was a pro feature, but now you can create themes based on token sets. One thing to call out there is that you are not going to be able to create modes based on your sets. You need themes for that, which is, well, we basically build themes to support variables on its own. So basically, when I jump here, a mode is basically the horizontal column here. And we need a theme group to be able to create different modes, which you can manage here. And the manage themes dialog, where if you create multiple options for a theme group, then that's going to be multiple modes inside of your collection. But I can just use this to export, hit confirm, choose my sets, and then export to Figma, which will then export my variables. If I jump into that one real quick, that will show us another new thing. You see the font weight here. That one is set to 700. The font family is set to Roboto Mono. And these are basically my atomic references that are used in my typography styles. So if I jump into this typography token here, you can see this is used here, and this is a super simple example. But as I have just created this using the styles checkbox for typography, and I open this one, you might notice that this is now using also typography variables. So these references that are coming from the variables are now used inside of these styles. And this is something that we have not just for typography, but for colors, for shadows, for borders, and for gradients as well. So any reference that you're using inside of your token values is then going to be applied on the style itself. I think that's quite exciting because before that you had just gradients that were using basically raw hex values, and now you can actually use variables that you can theme as well.
Jan, we had a short question in the chat.
Yes.
Maybe you want to cover this. No, that's Sam. Sorry. Like, that's Ranko's question. What's the impact of the new token mode? So the new DTCG format, kind of. Maybe you want to shortly cover that.
Yeah, the impact would be that if you have any pipeline that is using the contents of your tokens, such as the JSON that you're using, one thing you need to make sure is that your pipeline is set up for this new format, because maybe it was using the old version. So that's something you might need to check with your engineers. We do have a guide up as well. But basically, it means that and forgive my cat if you can hear her, but it's, I think, dinner time. You basically need to set up the pipeline so that it is able to work with that. We have a guide up for this, and we also worked on Style Dictionary for that reason, so that to make it available with the new DTCG format. That's one thing to call out. Other than that, there is no big implications on the usage itself inside of the plugin. And there is also one piece that we are still going to ship, meaning originally inside of the DTCG format, you would have been able to create a description for groups. So for this font family group here, I should be able to create a description for that. We haven't added that one yet, so we're not 100% compliant yet. But the most important part is basically that we offer a way for you to use the dollar syntax inside of these. I hope that answers the question. Please let me know if you have any additional follow-up on that one. Jumping back to that changelog, if we jump to the bottom, we covered this one as well, meaning you can use these typography variables. And there's a bunch of other things here as well. This one is probably the one that I am most excited about, the non-local variables. So in the past, it was basically the case where, if we quickly jump to one of these examples, these are our own variables. You were only able to create variables that reference other variables inside of the same file. So you had to have all of your collections inside this one file, like the core, the foundation, and also the theme. And these would then be able to cross-reference each other. Now, with version 2 of the plugin, you're going to be able to cross-reference these across files, as long as they're basically part of the same theme setup. What I mean by that is, I have these 3 files here. And the first one is called multidimensional core. And in this one, I have really just my basic colors. If you look at these are my yellows, my reds, all of that. And if I look at the theme configuration, the core is this one, which is a group called core with an option called primitives. So that reflects as well here. If I jump in, I can see this one is enabled, meaning that anything part of this theme is going to be created as a variable. If it was disabled or set to reference only, it would not be exported to Figma and would not be part of the output. In my case, I want these created. And with the new way of exporting styles and variables of the plugin, I can basically say, for this one file, take all the variables. I don't care about styles in this one. I want to create them with variable references, although we are not creating styles, so that's not really in use here. If I hit confirm, I can choose my themes. So in my case, I just want core to be created. That's the only one. I hit export to Figma, and I would then, if I didn't have these yet, create all of these. Now that's still fine because that's not using any references yet. But what would happen if I wanted to use that in another file? So really what I would want to do here is to push this state up to GitHub now, or to my Git provider basically, so that it has these references. Each theme basically has a reference to tokens that match certain variables. And we do that by name matching. So if you go to manage themes and jump into this thing here, there is a tab here called styles and variables that exists also in the old version of the plugin, but it basically has all the information about which variables are connected to which token. So in this case, colors.black is connected to colors.black with the same name. Under the hood, this is really tracking a variable reference that we are using as a unique identifier to then say, hey, if you have any token that's called colors.black, actually apply this variable, this unique one. And this is very important because we are using this information to then, once I push this context up, in this other file, I'm using the same repository. So all of these share the same branch, the same repository, basically. If I was now to create these using just the brand set, so in this case, these 2 brands, I hit export. What that will do is it will look at the theme. And in this case, if we look at that, it's set to this one. it will look at that theme and then say, hey, which references are you using? And then create variables based on these references that are actually referencing other tokens. So in our case, if I click here, we can see that the accent colors are coming from a different library. So these are actually coming from this file here. And those are driving this one. This is what then enables a third layer as well. If we go to this other file and jump here, and it can get quite complex if you have that, but sometimes it makes sense to just separate the areas of concern for some of your themes. This third set here is basically doing the same thing. I have my foreground tokens, which are, again, a reference to this other one coming from the core in this case. Like this colors.black is a reference from the core file. And then I have others that are basically defined here that are defined locally or from the brand set. So we can come up with quite different ways of structuring this. Can be useful if you, for example, have component tokens that you didn't want to expose, or that you just want to keep to a certain file that you never want to publish at all, or you have semantic tokens that you do want to publish. So separating these out into individual files makes a lot of sense. One thing to call out is that this reference system will only work if you're using what I call a pure reference, meaning if I open this up and look at this one, this is just using one value, which is colors.black. That is a single reference. There is no manipulation going around or no modifier that we apply on top of that. There is no math attached or anything. If you would apply math, like this is a color token, so that wouldn't work here. But if I had like a sizing token that was using a reference to something else times 2, that would not work because Figma doesn't support these dynamic references. However, we then set the value to this resulting value of that one. So if that was a value of 8, that would be 16 that we set here. But the references wouldn't exist. The same is true if you have anything like RGBA modifications, like if you had this one to set the opacity and set that to 0.5, then that would basically mean that the variable created would just be not using this reference, but actually a value like that one. So that would be the result. That's one thing to call out, to remember when you have these non-local variables, that it will not work for, or it will not create the references if you do have any modifications applied. But of course, we hope that Figma eventually adds support for this, especially for these alpha modifications, because I think that's just a key aspect of doing anything with dynamic decisions. So yeah, I'm still hopeful that this will come eventually. Back to the changelog. And please interrupt me if anyone has questions so far. I think we have a few more to cover, but I'm not going to go into all of the bug fixes because there were quite a lot. One other exciting thing is the ability to set, and this might be a minor thing for some, but the ability to set that your tokens should be applied not as variables or styles, but as actual resolved values. So no variables or styles at all. Why is that important? That is important if you are using styles, but you need to see 2 frames side by side that are using different themes. In the old version of the plugin, that was impossible because we always applied that style, and that style would, if it was local, always basically change its value globally because style values are global. Now, in an example like this one, where I basically have this theme here, that's in this case using a variable, but I want to display them side by side, I can now set this to resolved values, no variables or styles, and then again hit apply, and it will be rethemed. I can then do that again, choose another theme like that, and then do that again for the other one, and then do that again for the other one. So basically kind of a similar effect that we'd have inside Figma's modes, but this is then just using these raw values. So it's kind of in a detached state, which really is useful if you're working with styles. Variables already have this in a way where you have the different mode selectors in Figma. So that's great there. But if you're working with styles, you didn't have that so far. And it, yes, will detach from the style itself, but sometimes it's really just for presentation where you want to just quickly see how it looks like in this other theme and not create different styles or so. So it's like a quick way to get to that same result. The only other big piece to call out that I can't show right now is the Bitbucket support. I can show that, but I didn't really set anything up in that regard. But we do support Bitbucket now, meaning that if you have your token stored on Atlassian's Bitbucket, then you would be able to connect that as well. Single file support, multi-file support, read and write. Your engineers can push to that Git repo, and then you could use that inside Figma, making use of all that bidirectionality that we have offered for other providers since quite a while. And then the most important change, I think, in my eyes, is the ability to sync to Studio. And I think we'll have a segment on this later on. So I'm not going to jump too much into that. Maybe we can show that later as well. But basically, Studio is our own platform for managing design tokens. And the plugin version 2 allows you to connect that, meaning that some of these tokens are actually coming from a dynamically generated graph. So these were not created manually. And if we look at settings and to add sync provider here, which looks a bit different now, given we have added so many providers already, you can now choose Token Studio, which is in early access so far. So it's an alpha. Not everyone has access so far, but if you do, this is how you would be able to use it and then read and write tokens to that dedicated platform. I think we can jump into that after this section. But basically, that covers some of the most important upcoming changes for 2.0. The release, we've had that in beta for a while now. If I stop sharing real quick again. Basically, we wanted to really make this a release that is stable. So we had this in beta for, I think, a few months now. We actually wanted to release a couple of weeks ago, but pushed it out because we really wanted to make sure that things work, and some users were still experiencing problems. Likely we will release that next week, but I don't want to make any promises. We'll do another release candidate tomorrow, and then hopefully follow up with the release. Does anyone have any questions that we could cover?
I don't see a lot of questions for now. I see that there are already a lot of answered in the YouTube chat as well by Sam and by Marco. So that is nice. Thanks for the demo. I think really insightful to see what's coming up for people who haven't even seen it. Excited about the new release candidate tomorrow. Hopefully, a lot of things are fixed again and working as expected, and some good stuff coming up. So very nice. And I think, as you already mentioned, this ties into the Studio platform. And I think Mike can share some more information on that. Thanks, John.
Yeah, I can do that, Robert.
Great.
Yeah. So yeah, Studio. I think this week, or was it last week already, we started a bit of communication, or rather we've been talking about it for a very long time. I think it's really what, the platform is really what started the plugin. So yeah, maybe again, a little bit of context. When we started working, and I was working with Esther at the time, we were working on some pretty complex design system challenges. And yeah, there was not really an elegant solution at that point. Design tokens were there. Figma didn't really have a solution for that beyond styles. And yeah, that's kind of how we bumped into Figma tokens at the time. Jan had built the plugin, and we were like, yeah, this is probably a good idea. So started working with that, started building our headless design system. But yeah, we were always also struggling with the code side and and everything in between, and deployments, and working with a distributed team, different people working on the system. Yeah, there was a lot of challenges around many topics. So yeah, the idea was always that we wanted to work on that piece in the middle. It wasn't completely clear in the beginning, but it was clear there was a disconnect. And yeah, well, before we wanted to go all in on that, we always had this idea that we probably should validate some of the hypotheses that we had. We had by then spoken with hundreds of people across different communities. We were interviewing design system teams and design system designers, engineers. So there was like a whole year of sort of getting into that, but then we thought, okay, let's first validate that if designers can work with design tokens and we can synchronize that, is that actually going to bring about the change that we are looking for? Is this a thing, right? Are we ready for that? So that's really how we went pretty much all in on the plugin first. Although we never really wanted to be a plugin, we figured that probably would be the easiest way for us to be in the workspace where designers are. Figma seemed to be the most logical option at that point. And yeah, and the rest was history, kind of. Yeah, and that really brought us to the stage where we could learn a lot. Of course, yeah, all of you here and everybody in our community, it's been a super amazing journey, and we were really able together to learn so many things about building design systems, about theming, about pipelines, about scaling, about all these different things. And that's really been contributing for like more than 2 years now to the development of the platform that we have built, and not just the platform. So as I mentioned before, this goes hand in hand with a 1-year development now since till the release, or almost a year of work in Style Dictionary to build version 4. We built the graph engine, which we have shown before, but I'll show it again and talk a bit about it. We've built a really amazing, enterprise grade infrastructure under our platform. So again, that's a layer that we have created, which is running completely on very modern technology using Kubernetes and infrastructure as code. We are cloud agnostic, which means in the future you will be able to deploy Token Studio just like Penpot on almost any infrastructure, which means that we're really working towards a situation where also on this level we have something that's really solid. And what is the vision for the platform, right? So that is I think the most important thing, because we are onboarding a good number of early adopters now on the platform. We're getting feedback, and one of the questions that I've been getting quite a bit is okay, so what exactly is this platform? Is this something like Knapsack or Supernova or Zero Height, or are you going to do documentation, right? So I just want to spend a few minutes kind of explaining what we are going to be and what we are not going to be. So we are not trying to be another synchronization or just storage platform where you put your information from somewhere into it and you send it somewhere, or where you write documentation, around your design system. At some point, we might give you that feature as well. However, I think we went quite deep down the rabbit hole of what it really means to build and scale and operate a design system, and some of the challenges that we see all around. I'm not going to go into all of them, but I want to just address a few of them that I think were quite pivotal in terms of the direction that we went. So even though we've always been very deeply committed to design tokens, and especially Marco and I, maybe Marco, if you want to jump in a bit, that might be fun. But I think over the last years that we've been working together on various really complex design system challenges, I think it became apparent to us. Yeah, it became apparent to us that design tokens at some point have some serious limitations. And I don't mean to say that for all design systems there are serious limitations, but the moment you are starting to talk about multi-brand, white labeling, supporting multiple platforms, having multiple layers on your design system,
all of these
breakpoint
different
density,
dimensions.
Yeah, so I think what kind of happened there, and this is really I think one of the big changes that we went through when we realized that at some point things just don't scale. And I'm not just talking about the explosion of tokens. I'm not talking about the permutation hell that you go through if you want to generate multiple dimensions of themes and modes, but also to build a system that people can understand. If you're dealing with, and this is not an exception, there are plenty of design systems out there that have 10,000 plus design tokens, because there's just so much that's being managed. And to keep that understandable and to keep that manageable, design tokens become really hard. So the first thing that we created was actually token flow 2 years back. And that was the first attempt to kind of bring some structure into the chaos, to visualize the references and the relationships between tokens, to show which sets are related to each other when you're switching between themes. Yeah, and that gave us some leverage, but at the same time, it was also not really helping us still to understand the logic that went behind this architecture. Yeah, I think, Marco, maybe you can talk a bit about how we evolved from there and how actually the graph engine in its current state was born, and what is the underlying idea there as well.
Yeah, so like as you just said, right, the scalability was the issue. We tried this with tokens and we just ran into maintenance nightmares over and over again. Just like everything just explodes. You have no idea where tokens are. Without token flow, it's nearly impossible to understand the routing anymore. Like if it goes through like multiple dimensions of themes, and it got nightmare into management, right? When you have like, what did we end up with, like more than 10,000 tokens, and it was just a core set where we actually used our hidden feature that nobody should know about. So yeah, you're muted.
Please don't mention it.
Or, yeah, no, I just said a hidden feature that nobody should know about. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. It would result in a way bigger number again on tokens. But yeah, it didn't scale, so we had to rethink the full process, how we got there, and how to bring these dimensions. And a lot of these tokens just exploded because they didn't have an underlying logic. At the end they had, which was in our heads, but we had to formulate them in static values. We lost all the logics behind it, and it was really impossible to understand why we got to that one value, right? Like maybe it was a reference, but like why was the reference there? Like all of this was missing. So all of these points kind of went into our ideation phase of like how do we solve this, right? And we know that in IT systems, graphs are quite popular at the moment, right? That's one thing. We've seen a few tools out there that actually use graphs, especially when you look into the gaming industry, if you look into 3D modeling, all of this difference. And it is a really cool way to work with logics and build scalable systems. So we have been very deep with our heads in the graph engine for the last year. 1.5 years now, I think. 2 years nearly.
2 years,
yeah, we had some iterations in it. We are still iterating. We're still making it better. We're still tweaking things. But we are comfortable in the space where we are at the moment. So maybe also, that's a good point actually to talk about like these challenges we want to bring up, right? So let's shortly like talk about this, because we are confident that we can solve tons of logical issues that everybody out there faces. And we would love to actually introduce a new format kind of where you bring us your challenges with current tokens and we try to solve them in the graph engine and show you how this works. Just like as a template, should be an open session, and we want to talk this. So if you have something and want to contribute towards that and want to see us banter about this and like just break our heads about your problems and maybe help you solve them, just shoot a message at us, like ping us on Slack or anywhere. And we are happy to actually work on these topics if you're able to share your information. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add on to this a little bit, and then I'll start showing some stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things that is really that I find probably the most powerful about thinking of your design data as a graph, and specifically a graph that holds the logic, right? Because we always say that a design token is a design decision, and that might be true when you apply the design token. But if you're the creator of that token, that is not one decision. Usually a series of design tokens represents a very complex series of decisions that you made, which result in these static values sitting in these design tokens. And one of the best examples that I can give here is, just imagine the scenario that you join a new design system team, and your requirement is that your surface logic needs to be implemented now or increase, and you don't have enough subtle colors to create your surfaces. So the next logical thing that probably you want to do is that, okay, let's increase our colors from 12 to 16 steps, or from 10 to 16 steps, on my color ramp. Now, where do you start? You start looking at a bunch of hex values. unfortunately, the guy or lady who created this left the organization without documenting which tool was used. Was it Leonardo? Was Prism used? Did somebody fine-tune the colors manually because they look great, or were they checked with an accessibility checker, or what was the logic? Maybe you have no idea. Was it a luminosity-based scale, or there are just what color space did they use? Did they use OKHSL? Did they use lab? Did they use who knows, right? So it's really, really hard to decipher that back from an inherited system. If you had used a logic like our graph engine, if you had used the logic and defined that logic that, okay, I'm taking the base color, I'm going to take the U out of this. Based on the U, with these kind of steps, I'm going to generate this many steps in my color scale, and you can go endless in how you generate these colors, but you can, in our engine, define that step by step. This doesn't only mean that you can later come back and fine-tune it or introduce new steps. It also means that everybody who comes into your organization will be able to go through this self-documenting system of how every decision in your design system came about. And especially when you're talking about scale, I think this is one of the most powerful things, because the knowledge drain that happens in teams is just enormous. I see it everywhere. I know very few people who truly love writing documentation, and I know even less people who like reading it, because ideally we can understand it, and that's often not the case. All right, Studio. Enough talking. Let's show what this all means. Just open my screen over here. This is funny. Now I have to do this. No. Entire screen. There we go. So yeah, let's first look at the infinity mirror, because my tab doesn't want to change. It's interesting. Yeah, there we go. All right. Yeah. So what we're looking at here is our platform, which we also call Studio, and we call it Studio because it's not just a storage solution for your design tokens. It's truly a studio. Yeah, this is the first time we're showing this in public as a demo. As we've been saying, we are going through early access, so that means the product isn't perfect. We want people in to show us where we still need to work. And to get our early feedback, right? But we are moving towards beta, so we'll be here for a little while. So yes, you can see the dashboard is still quite empty. Just a couple of key features. So as you can see here, you can switch organizations. This means that we support you to be part of multiple separate organizations, very much like Figma or GitHub. You can create new organizations. You have your management of members. We do manage users in groups, which you can create, and we create those groups again by attaching policies. And currently, this is still a bit, this is still code. Obviously, we'll have a UI for this, but what I just mean to quickly highlight here is that we have an enterprise-grade policy system in place for management of access and permissions. So you will literally be able to manage these things if you want, to a single token level in a single project or a configuration or whatever. So this is one of the underlying things that can be very powerful. I'm currently in our organization, so this is where we already manage our own design system, and as you can see, we've been creating a lot of demo projects. But yeah, we are already running our own design system for the plugin, and the studio that you're looking at right now, it's running off Studio, so that's quite cool. So this is your projects overview. You can have multiple projects, and each project usually represents a design system or a variation of a design system. So let's jump into one, and I'm opening one that has very few tokens in it, just a few. So this is the project dashboard of this design system. You can see there's a few things on the dashboard. We are working on fleshing out this dashboard right now in terms of what users would really like here. So if you have any ideas around this, maybe as I show you more of the features, what you would like to have on the dashboard, we'd love to learn that. We're going to bring some analytics on your design tokens, right? So how does your library look? What were the latest changes that were made by contributors, etc. But yeah, we would love to know specifically, like, what would your ideal dashboard look like? Let's jump into the design token. So What you can see over here is the design token editing experience. When I click on a set, so this is very similar to what you're used to in the plugin. You can see that I have a table editing experience where I can create or edit my tokens in a much more easy way than in the plugin before. I have the search and things that I was used for. I can reference other tokens. I can save that. I can also create new tokens in a way that's more like the form, like a normal way. I can directly select my token types from here, and I can create that. It will change the layout based on the kind of token that I'm selecting. We have our themes in here. So if you were to import your tokens from that you currently have, you will get your themes in here as well. You will be able to switch between those. And what we have in here as well is, and I'm just going to quickly go to another design system because that will show me better references. Let me quickly look at some of our tokens. So, for example, if I go over here to colors gray 700, for example, and I go down here to my token flow, I can actually see now within context of my token that, okay, this is my current token. It's directly being referenced by these 4 tokens. And this one over here is, again, having dependencies because it's being referenced by these tokens. We can, let me zoom in a bit. We can also see the atomic references. So this is a shadow token. Inside in the color, it has a reference. So we're still able to trace that all the way back. What is also interesting is that if I switch now to, let's say, my dark mode, you can see, if you keep an eye on the token flow, you'll see that now different references are connected to this token. So we can see this also in the context of a theme. In the in the editing view, you can see that we have all the values over here. We have the resolved values over here when you're switching between themes. Quickly jumping back to my playground. We have another thing as well, which is what we call the graph-based set. So this is not yet the full graph engine implementation, but we have now token sets that are actually created using a graph. So I have one over here, and I hope with the streaming quality that you'll be able to see it reasonably well.
We can see the scale. So just to explain it, kind of, we are just having 3 input colors here, creating 3 scales, and then combining them to tokens. So
so that's what's kind of going on here. And like Marco said, so we were using logic, but these are translating again just into tokens. So you can see that they all have a name. This is all happening automatically. It's generating these color scales for me. And if I go back into the graph and let's say I just change a single value over here, right? So now blue. And you can see it automatically pick the color name as well. If I go back to the table, you can see that now my blue colors are generated for me as design tokens. If I go to any other set,
so after you've done editing, maybe you want to bring on Jan with the plugin again and actually show us how we can connect this to Figma directly from Studio, right?
That would be really cool.
And because we also have some questions in the audience that I would love to bring up then. But let's
first... because I can't see the questions right now. So
hello, Jan. Welcome back.
Hey, hello. Should show how this would work also in Figma, or how we can take this graph to Figma itself, because that's I think what a lot of people are asking about. How can I get this to my variables? How can I make use of this? And one way of doing that is to just connect that. You can also, if you want to.
No, come on, Jan, you're the plugin master. Let's give it to Jan.
If you can take over the screen, then I can jump back. Otherwise, we have the big mirror.
Try to see if I can do that. Share my screen, entire screen. There we go.
So while we talk about this, let me bring up the question from Onur. So what's the plugin's role with Studio moving forward? Studio handling all the logics, calculations, referencing, theming, while the plugin is used to apply the resolved tokens to Figma elements?
I can quickly go on that because that's actually an interesting one also in terms of the longer perspective of the plugin, because while it's great to do everything in the plugin, it's also not, because we don't really have the real estate to do it. Figma also restricts, plugins in the sandbox and in terms of performance. So ideally, some of the heavy lifting should not happen in a plugin in Figma. So if you are going to use a lot of the advanced features, definitely if you're using graphs and all that, you will be not doing that in the plugin. However, we're not going to stop you from using the plugin or doing what you do today. We're just going to expand on the features that are outside of the limitations of Figma, and we want to bring those as well and make those accessible to you, not just in Figma, but any tool that you use, whether that's a technology stack or another design tool or a motion tool, that shouldn't matter. Over the next few years, we should be able to have access to this data everywhere. Yeah.
Okay, Jan, you ready?
Oh yeah. Sorry, I was just thinking could be better to turn off my sharing for a moment, but there we go. So if I jump
What?
back
You're not
to
sharing yet? No, there it is. Yeah,
I should see.
now I have it.
All right, so I was just adding this project that Mike was just showing. And if I go back to Studio, which is over here, I created an API key. Inside of this new DS project, I had a connection string that I'm using. And I was also using that API key that I created. If I jump to and let me turn on dark mode, that's better. Like we have these tokens here, we have the graph here that's driving this. If I jump to the plugin, what you will see is the same sets. So core colors, semantic light, semantic dark. These include just a few, but these include all of the dynamically generated colors. If you go over here, these are all of these basically. Now, if I wanted to make a change to a graph, like to dynamically generated tokens, that's something that you would do inside Studio because it would be way too complex to do all of this inside of the plugin, which is why the plugin is jumping into a role of a consumer for these complex decisions, which is fine, really. Like if you wanted to change something here, then you'd go to the to Studio itself. Maybe, for example, we change this primary one to a red, hit save. So now this is using red colors. I jump back. This is still using green, right? But if I pull, and this might take a moment or two, was that the right one? Colors red. Should have updated. I think it was a slight update that we were able to see there. Yeah, so this is now actually using the red ones. Now I could just apply these like anything else. Like these would just be applicable to all of my layers. But I could also just create my variables based on that. If I enable this real quick, I could go ahead and jump to manage themes. You might see that the base core does have 51 tokens inside. And if I export this using just the base core, hit export, you can see all of these colors are basically created. But these came from the graph. So this is really exciting because you don't have to set up hundreds of modifiers or duplicate your logic a bunch of times. You can just use the plugin to consume those tokens coming from the graph, which enables a much bigger scale than what you would have been able to do before. But you can also use the plugin to make changes to those tokens. So this cut over here, if I save that, and I think this is being overridden by that one, so let's edit that one. Let's turn this into a black. Hit save. It says token updated in Token Studio, and if I jump over to the dark one, it's also black now. So we have this bidirectionality going in both sides for static sets, and we have the one-sided way of consuming tokens for the dynamic one. But we're also working on making it so that the graph could have inputs that you could also define inside of the plugin, for example.
Yeah. Okay, maybe we'll quickly take a few questions in the middle. So Jeroen was asking about the idea behind Studio and Git integration, and if Studio would replace the plugin Git integration. Yes and no. Again, I just want to be very clear that we are not funneling people into our platform or into another way of working if you don't want to do that. So like sync will remain from the plugin. You can still sync to the providers. Storage providers and syncing will be something that will be available across our platform or our different platforms and other tools like the plugins. However, we also know that there is limitations. Again, from Figma, we cannot do proper Git. We can only use the APIs on top of Git platforms, which means that there are limitations. And that's why we have chosen to do that different in Studio. So Studio is not just using Git. Studio is completely built on top of Git. So every single interaction on a token, on the file system, on configurations, well, we present this to you in multiple ways in the future, but right now in the UI that we were just going through, all these transactions happen on a file system on Git. So this means that you will get everything that you will get out of GitHub. Essentially, you will get your proper branches, pull requests, tags, releases, pipelines, and all that. We also realized that we probably will not be the preferred platform to run all these repositories and pipelines in large organizations, which is why we chose to go with native Git, so that you can do mirroring, or you can do pull requests between the repos. You can run a fork. You can set that up how you want. But we will give you the ability to create one or multiple repos on a project and organize your data across these one or multiple repos, and have access to that. So you will get, you will also get APIs on that, both in REST and GraphQL. So we're making this really flexible. So we're trying to set you up in a way where you can use it as an out-of-the-box solution. However, we believe that when you're scaling, there will be a lot of opinions in an organization that would want you to do things a certain way. And we really want to be a flywheel to get you there, giving you the technology that you need to get this all in place. So yeah, I hope that answers a bit how we look at Git and how that will change. I got another really interesting one, and I want to look at this quickly because this is really where we're heading. So right now in the Studio, in the token editing experience, there are no previews. In the upcoming release, the big upcoming release that we're having this year, we will have a lot of features around components, previews connected to tokens. So that means that you will be able, for example, to copy the URL of any Figma frame, just paste it in the preview, and it will automatically run something like an emulator. We're not generating code for you to use in production, but we're generating code that actually represents the component or the frame. In code, we will automatically fetch the variables or design tokens that are applied in Figma, and we will then in real time allow you to make changes on the tokens and actually see that happening. We will also allow you to just put HTML in there and apply the token. So yeah, if you think about, let's say you're editing your semantic tokens, and you're working on the set that holds your surface logic and on colors, you may just want a series of boxes with the different text that can come on that with the right tokens applied, so that when I'm jumping between themes and I'm editing those tokens, I just want to quickly see a preview that makes sense to me, that just shows me all the use cases. I don't need cards. I don't need buttons, right? I really want to see those things. So on an individual set level, as you're going through the sets, you will be able to assign one or multiple previews, which you can always see. And when you're jumping between the themes, you can see that happening. We actually did upload a demo of that on YouTube, so it's already there.
Should we just show that example real quick?
Yeah, if you could do that, it would be great. Yeah, you have it, or
I don't have it ready.
Okay, then I'll just quickly.
Maybe that.
Yeah, just open it up and we talk about some other questions while.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Or or you mean you don't have it on the machine?
No, I think Jan, do you have it running? Otherwise, I'll just find a video. We can quickly show that.
I can just show a Figma mock as well, if that doesn't,
Yeah.
that doesn't show the
Yeah.
exciting part about switching themes, which I think is pretty cool. But still, it shows
Yeah.
that how it could look like. So basically, what we are planning to do is something like this one, where you have, if I jump
It's not
here,
a video, Jan.
it's not a video, no. Should we do the
No,
video?
I
think it
found
quickly
one.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. I think this is very cool. Sorry. Let me share that.
Woo, Inception. Let's see how the sharing is.
And one interesting thing to note about this is that we're actually using Studio to build the tokens that drive Studio, which you might see as part of this video, where basically the whole UI changes depending on me changing some of these values here. But the preview pane on the right is where it gets interesting, where you have full control over what you see here. You could build your own previews. You could build your own kitchen sinks. It's important that you see what each token change means, which is why the plugin in Figma is great, because you can see that. But with this platform, you basically see that as well, optimized for the set that you're viewing, which could be a component set, which could be a theme set like this one. Or if you open a button example, you could see all the buttons that are actually coming from your DS. And that's what I meant before, where I said we were creating our own themes that drive the Studio UI. So this is super purple now. But it helps to just see what does each change mean. Is it still feeling good? How does the border value change? The whole perception. Is green nice? In this case, probably not.
You didn't like it that much?
Let's do monochromatic.
Yeah. That's cool. Nobody shows off where we want to go with previews. This will be a lot more extended, kind of. This is the first drafts of it, right? We also talked about like iframe injection and like just sending your variables to iframes and all of these. Like, right, we really want you to get the real preview and not like the fake one we have in other tools, kind of where we're always limited by the implementation. So this is kind of where we are trying to head towards. Okay, we have a few more questions. Can we like run through a few of them and like let's make it a bit like short ones, kind of. Great question by Anders, kind of. I have already a math behind my token setup. Will it be translated into Studio Platform in the Graph Engine? So we're not dynamically translating. We will still support the math in your tokens in the Studio. It's clear, right? But the Graph Engine is quite fast in building dynamic math-based tokens and also way nicer. So if we look at like, let's imagine, I don't know what you have as tokens, but you have a geometric series for your font size generation or spacing generation, right? This is in the Graph Engine, actually one node. I can share this in a second, but really like these things are super fast. Then you can have your dynamic naming, which you just iterate through that way, give it a name, done. If you want to see more of that, we can do this later. But that's also something, for example, for the challenge session, as we said, where you could challenge us with some logics you have to build this in the graph. Cool. Next one. Where do we have one? Actually, I like this one because Mike, you maybe want to say something to that.
Something like Figma for VS Code. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what to make of it, but what I can definitely talk about is that we are not just working on the platform. In fact, Andrew and some other people on the team have been working on bringing an entire development environment as well, which is a completely integrated development environment using our graph engine in VS Code. So we are bringing things really together. So we really believe that we should not disrupt any flow. So if you're working as an engineer in VS Code, we're bringing the tooling there to you. If you're working in Figma, you can work in your flow there. And there's a layer in the middle as well, right, where we feel the platform has its own place. So yeah, maybe if you want to elaborate a bit what you mean, or Marco, if you had a different interpretation, but.
No, I also just wanted to say in the future, we're probably offering the graph engine in your environment in VS Code even, right? Stuff like this.
So you will be able to build your own nodes. You will be able to play with the nodes directly in your code editor. You will be able to build no-code applications while building the nodes. So imagine this, right? Like you're building your design system, and there's this one node that you would really love to have, but it's missing. And so you can build a node, and they're actually very simple. It's pretty much a small declaration. You put a small function inside there, or a big one, ideally not. And you can release that, and you can now use that in the graph engine. So the graph engine is really a platform. It's a development platform. So we're using it now for creating design logic, but it's an engine that can do anything. You can build a synthesizer with it. You can process photos with it. You can, I don't know, it can talk to LLMs and other models and do all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot that's going to come this year. Really excited about that. But yeah, before we talk about all the things that are coming, should we? And I'll do that briefly. But should we quickly run through the other features that we had?
Let's keep this for the next one, maybe, because we're already quite long in time, and I think we still wanted to have a QA session. So let's do one or two more questions, and then we can actually move over to our QA section. I think Everybody will be then
Sounds
like
good. Yeah.
let hang on our cliffhanger and needs to join in next time.
Oh, that's what you're doing. I like
Yeah,
it.
right.
Getting those viewers up.
Exactly. We need the attention span. No. Okay, there's one more question I would actually love to answer, which is like, how production ready is the concept of math-based tokens for colors, for example? I know our designers often manually tweak colors. Okay, so this is not, I think, a concept of math-based tokens that is lacking. It's mostly of like how people actually consume it. Most of us actually use some tool to create their color scale, right? Either you're using Atmos, you're using Leonardo, maybe you use Strom's color logic, right? All of them are based on math. If you're manually tweaking, you might want to think like, okay, why did you tweak that? And what tweaking did you actually have to do? Like Matthew Strom's color logic is purely based on math, right? But he does like kind of hue shifts to actually compensate for the color rotation that he has, right? And all of these little details. I think this is actually something where we have to think about the maturity of our design and not the maturity of the system underneath, right? Like how mature is our design? How algorithmic is it? So Jan, for example, right? If you look at Primer, it's a like very like logarithmic driven system on like the visual impairment, right? Where you dynamically calculate all the systems for different color blindness modes and everything, right? So this is already where we need these things kind of like, and stuff's happened. So I think some systems are further down the like mathematical approach, some are further down. But at the end, like a lot of color is just basic math, right? Color pickers, like we are using computers, so even manually tweaking them is still having some form of that.
Yeah,
Cool,
I also
okay.
think it's about like, fine-tuning a color in the moment, right? And I think that is just I mean, if you're doing design system, I don't think people should be manually tweaking colors because you want to rely on things, right? And of course you still see it. New branding comes in, the brand agency came out with the color palette and they thought it was great to tweak the yellows a bit, otherwise they look like baby poop. And yeah, and that's where the system went for a toss, and this one we see a lot. But yeah, ideally, I think you should try to ban those kind of fundamental subjective choices.
And maybe to add that, for example, if you're choosing values of hover or some slight dynamic alterations of your colors, right now you have to choose something that's based on a scale, and that might just not give you the right contrast or the right color that you're looking for. So why not just take that base color and then apply some math on top of it to get the desired contrast ratio, which is a much better system anyway. And I think all of our colors would really benefit from having a setup like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can do tons of this already dynamically in the graph engine of contrast checking. We can even have reduce alpha and all of this. So there's already a really bunch of nodes, but that's why we also want these challenges to bring us really the really hard stuff that we can see what nodes we are still missing actually in our engine, right? Because we feel that we have quite a lot to like solve most problems, but we might miss some stuff.
Yeah, and just to quickly follow up on Jeroen, because he mentioned that he was thinking about the yellow, right? And that's I think one of the things that I really love about the graph engine today is that we support, and soon even CMYK, but that we support almost every color space. So some color spaces are just not suitable to move through yellow, right? While other color spaces can do that better. In terms of how you calculate these transitions, right? So yeah, having the limitations in certain tools where you can use only 1, 2, 3, 4 color spaces to do things, that can be a real struggle. But suddenly when you can jump between color spaces to achieve the values you need, you will actually be able to get great results in some of the very different difficult colors, like yellow or orange or red, right? Like in these ranges, it can get ugly sometimes. But yeah, you can fix that as well. So you have a lot of knobs and dials to play with. All right. No, unfortunately, they're not going to be supported in the plugin to work with, but they will be supported as outputs when you work with it. So anyway, you don't want to work, let's say, with like a lab or something in, huh? I just
muted, Marco.
Marco?
Sorry. Yeah, I muted
Yeah,
my
I was
microphone.
wondering what's going on.
Yeah. Okay, always. No, so like when we are supporting them in the graph, actually we are using a color object with color spaces. We offer like a really big variety of color spaces, also of contrast algorithms. You can work with them through the graph engine. And to support the current token standard, which is not yet supporting spaces, there's a proposal for that, right, in the DTG. We normally do at the end a conversion into sRGB that we actually get into the hex value that is currently supported by the tokens. But this is a nice little change. When the token is updated in the future, we can dynamically remove these nodes and do a migration script, which is very easy to handle.
The bottom line is we support it everywhere, but if the tool doesn't support it, we can't really do much.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, that was wrong. Robert and Keegan, are you ready?
I think we are.
Yeah.
Keegan, you're ready? I heard you're dying.
Yeah, before disclaimer for everyone watching. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so you're fighting through that for us? Okay, good. Then let us give you guys the stage to introduce this, and we just like go backstage and see you in a second when you need us.
Yeah, sure. Shall I share my screen?
You can go ahead, Keegan, I think. Yeah. Let's go over to the community questions.
So just give me a second. So yeah, we thought it'd be a great idea to pull in some common threads that we saw in Slack and bring some clarity to them for the community. One of them is performance related. And from Gideon, we have, is there a way to optimize or achieve better performance when I change a token's name hierarchy at something like a semantic level? Right now, it's a few minutes for a single change. Now, I do know ever since we've been working on 2.0, we've greatly improved the performance plugin, but I think we have discovered a few things concerning Figma files. I think, Jan, if you remember, this is one of the threads that you jumped in with Gideon and informed him about the history of Figma files and how that could affect the plugin's performance.
Yeah. So basically, when the plugin operates on a very large scale, that means that we have to traverse all the layers, which sometimes can take a little bit, or sometimes, depending on the size, it can take a few minutes as well if it's really, really large. There is, however, one thing that we discovered, which, for example, for a file that is not that big, sometimes changes took a lot of time as well. But then taking all of the contents of that file and moving that to a new file in Figma drastically improved the performance. And basically the same was true for any kind of operation that we were doing inside Figma that might not even be related to the plugin. But the fact that the Figma kind of stores a version history on these, and we were seeing some really good improvements by just moving things to a new file. I know that's a really bad advice to give, but it was really hard to debug that because things were looking and working quite fine if things are in a new file. I guess that's for really, really long-running files where that was the case. But yeah, we weren't really sure what the other reason for that could be, except for because we are not keeping a cache anymore. Some people were asking if we are keeping a cache in the plugin, which can like bubble up over time. We did have a cache in the past. That was, I think, 1.5 years ago, where we were trying to use a cache to make operations faster. But since then, we worked with Figma to get our own, to get some unique operations that we use for the plugin API to be faster. So since then, we don't use a cache anymore. So that was really not a reason for the slowdown. In general, yeah, I would try to see if that solves things. If not, one thing that always helps is to make use of both tokens and variables to see if you can make like changes to your UI using a mode change. So I think the combination of tokens and variables is really where the most value lies, because you don't always need to change tokens itself if you can just apply different modes.
Right. And yeah, we have another one, I'm curious, from Jane, where she says, I ended up just going into themes.json file and cleaning out all the styles and you were previously deleted under the Figma style references for each theme, committed, pulled into Figma, and it fixed her issue. So essentially, I've come across an issue like this before where a user had 46 styles displayed in this model, but when they open the menu, it just shows 18. So I'm wondering if with regards to the file's history, if creating styles or variables over time, over a period of time, if that can accumulate and then cause any sort of disruption for users when they're creating new styles and trying to attach styles, which is what Jane was facing as an issue.
I don't think the version history would be one thing that's causing this, but one thing that could exist is that these styles of variables no longer exist in Figma. The problem there is that Figma never tells us. So sometimes you might remember these question marks on your variables that you also get when you have variables applied and then you delete them. Figma shows them still as a question mark with the name. When you do that, and we query that connected unique ID of a token connected to a variable, that's what we need to kind of apply variables. Figma gives us that, even though it's deleted, and it never says that, hey, this thing is deleted, it doesn't exist anymore, don't use it, which is why this difference could exist. One thing that I usually do is when I create variables and it leads to these question mark thingies, recreating that again helps because then we kind of override. But the problem really is that we don't get that information from Figma variables. It's really, here is the variable values, go do something with it. But hey, it doesn't exist anymore, which is what we would want to know. But this is a good advice to basically jump into the themes JSON to clean out any variable references. You can do that using the Figma plugins UI as well by going into the manage themes and then saying, clicking detach variables, which can be a bit tedious if you have to do that for a bunch of variables. So we're working on something to speed that up. But you can also safely just recreate them, and that will also update the unique reference. If some users are still experiencing something where this is an issue, even though you're recreating a bunch of times, like 2 times with the max that you need to do that, then let us know so we can work on that.
All right, okay. Yeah, and the other topic we had was the use of dimension tokens. We have one from Liam. She asks, thoughts around the token type dimension supporting line heights? Rationale, a lot of 4-point, 8-point grid systems set the line heights to those values. To me, it makes sense to set those tokens once, example, under dimension, possibly font size. However, font size doesn't follow the same rules and can break out of the grid. And so maybe the questions would be asked is, why use dimension tokens at all, and what benefit does it have over the types like spacing, sizing, and the other ones that dimension now supports?
There is not a lot of benefits except for standard, like following the standard. The dimension token is part of the W3C design tokens community group format. The line height token is not. Like that's basically just something we had in the beginning because we didn't really have anything from the standard. But one thing to call out is that we are thinking about this, and the way that we are approaching this is that these tokens that we had for individual atomic properties for typography, line height, letter spacing, font size, which are basically all dimension tokens, we need to think of them as scoped dimension tokens for a very specific use case, for line heights or for font sizes. So that's one of the things that we want to improve there, so that you can scope your dimension tokens to be for line height, to be for font size, and then you would also get them as your suggested tokens.
Yeah, so that's something we also worked on the graph engine, right? Where we have a dimension type, which is a separation of actually unit and value, because this is actually how you want it, right? You don't want your unit close, like combined with your value, because calculations get hard. But if you have it separated as object into parts, we can still do calculations with the value without drawing units, right? And all of that. If we now have the stair, we always need to interpret the string, kind of like it can be tricky. And in the way that would allow then future dimensions to support, right? Where we can support viewport with kind of units like this that are currently not in the spec, but we want to give you these options. The graph engine allows way more there already, kind of, and we also want to extend that. Mike, you also have to say something to that? I hate it when you look away from me. I need to always change that. Now it works better. No, but let's put Jan in the middle.
All right.
Yeah.
No, the only thing that also comes to mind is that, like, your multi-platform issue, right? So ideally, you do not want to deal with units till the end, or till you know what is your target. And the way we have been looking at design systems a lot from the architecture perspective is that Figma is really a target. It's not a source for your design data. That sounds maybe counterintuitive, but if you consider the limitations that Figma has, and you may have faced those in terms of how do you design the anatomy of your component, you need to do certain hacks in Figma. Let's just think about a focus ring, right? So yeah, and all those kind of things, but also just how Figma works with dimensions and how, for example, you work on other platforms with dimensions. There's a lot that you want to do, and when you want to work with math, like Marco said, these units really sit in the way. So we are also trying to work with the DTCG to kind of work towards a system where, like for example, in color, the new proposal for the color token is no longer a hex value, but it's going to be, there will be a hex value to represent that, but it will also hold the color space and it will hold the individual channels of the color space. And we believe that a unit should, as such, also be an attribute that is sitting beside the value of that if you want that unit. That way you can do all your math without any issues. You will not have issues in style dictionary and things like that.
Yeah, also to keep the tokens kind of more consistent, right? Because now we have different formats in the proposal. So we kind of want to move into this different approach where these things are consistent through every token. And you don't need to think about like, okay, one has the unit inside, one is it outside, right? One is split into channels and alpha. Like, yeah, this kind of needs to be a bit fixed, let's say like this.
Yeah. We still have some time to go, some way to go with the spec.
The good thing is on the graph engine, we're really working object-based, and you can always transform at the end. We give you solutions for that. So like, yeah, we really want to give you more power to work with more abstract logics and more abstract approaches. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. So we are at the 1.5 hour mark. Do we want to do a last question?
Yeah, maybe we can just do this one.
There it is. Okay.
Just as opinion, where do you usually classify spacing values in Token Studio, under spacing category or on dimension? When I've imported spacing values variables, it goes under dimension category. I don't know if this is correct, or should it fit on spacing? So this is a question I had as well when we had the input variables function, because you only import them as either dimension or number. So what if users want them under spacing, sizing, or other such tokens?
Yeah, that is that ties into what Jan just mentioned as well, right? So we solved scoping with types, and I still think that's quite elegant because it allows you to have a clearer overview of what the tokens mean. Because if they have a type that is specific already, you don't need to create a longer naming string for your token. Of course, you may still want to add sometimes the type in your token name. That is useful in certain layers. But yeah, definitely not always. So coming to the import thing, so the way Figma solved this is having dimensions and scoping them on the token itself. So it's the same difference really, if you think about it. But it's so when you import it, it is not really clear if what this dimension token was supposed to be, because Figma doesn't as such store that information specifically. So if you want to maintain your tokens like that, you can import once into the plugin, and you could still categorize it like that, because eventually those will come back to your variables as dimensions, but you would still be able to bring that categorization. Am I saying that right, Jan? I see you thinking suddenly.
Those are basically float variables that they offer. But yeah, you meant those, I guess, right? Yeah.
Cool.
Do we have time for one next? Or
you have a good one? Is it really good that we are going overtime?
No,
Is this like, you know, in Austria, like on the concerts we say Zuckerberg. Is it that one?
If you can tell us what it means, we can maybe say yes or no.
One more song.
Okay, let's do one more. Why not?
All right.
Alex, and I think he also dives into it a bit more, but should font size use the dimension type or font size? I've defined all size-based value with dimension, but it then feeds a font size to the wrong Figma attribute. It does work when setting font size, but unsure about the updated spec. And yeah, he added some more information on this thread of his. More largely, it'd be great in the future for Token Studio and its docs to make it clear what token types to use to align with the specs and what Figma expects.
This is coming down a bit to the same thing, right? So I think, see, we are committed towards, creating the workflow that works best, for the way you want to work in Figma with your design system. on the other hand, is not just Figma, right? So I do understand a lot of questions come from Figma and variables, but for me, the bigger question of when I talk to engineers, they look at things often quite differently, how they want their tokens, how they want them organized, what makes sense to them, right? So I think this is a much bigger discussion. And this is really where, as a community, we have to talk more about these things. And we're always happy to talk. So because this is really what drives us, right? At the end of the day, we're building the tools for you. But we need to think about a bigger picture. We're not just dealing with Figma. We're dealing with Figma. We're dealing with Penpot. We're dealing with Plasmic. We're dealing with so many technology stacks that are integrating with design tokens. And there's more and more tools coming out. Tools like Webflow, right, that bring, and Framer, that are bringing in variables. They are also bringing plugin ecosystem. They're also opening their APIs to it. So I think this is just becoming a much larger discussion as tools are finally starting to adopt design tokens. We now have to find out, what is the right amount of token types that we need to do these things efficiently, because Figma uses scoping, but another tool may not have that concept of scoping on a token. So how will it know what is a font size or what is actually a dimension or a spacing value? So I think this is a bit of a question that we have to figure out as an industry and a community together, how this is really going to work. We don't have all the answers yet. But yeah, for me, it's hard to answer this question purely in the context of Figma. And yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to add something.
Hopefully we can find the answer together with everyone in the community, as you mentioned.
Cool.
All right. And I think this is also a good roundup for everything. There are some questions more I saw on the FigJam board, but maybe we can answer them on the FigJam board so people can revisit that. I think that would be good. That said, thanks everyone for attending the office hour. Thanks everyone here for talking in the office hour. Esther as well. Thank you for bringing her back, Marco. Thanks everyone. I think very insightful stuff. Hopefully we can come with good news on the upcoming 2.0 release for the plugin next week. And yeah, subscribe to our Substack and our Slack to keep updated with all the news that we bring. So thanks everyone, and see you the next time on the office hour.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you. Have a nice evening.